The committee on whole is called back to order. I'll go ahead and give the floor first to Mr. Carlson for clarification.
Thank you, sir. Towards the end of last night, Speaker Bloss asked me a couple questions about the BPT, how it arrived at the current 4% rate, 5% rate for the 4%. And he asked me whether or not I thought that keeping the BPT at 5% was illegal. You know what, it was late, it's baseball season, we're getting thrown fastballs, curveballs, changeups, sliders, knuckleballs. So, you know, my initial reaction was yes. I went ahead and looked at the subsequent budget bill, and the subsequent budget bill actually states business privilege tax increase, notwithstanding any other provision of law, rule, or regulation beginning on October 1, 2018, the business privilege tax shall be 5%. So it is not illegal. The budget for that fiscal year went ahead and enacted the 5% in statute vis-a-vis the budget. And another point of information is prior to the increase, or prior to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we used to get about $152 million in corporate income tax. And this budget bill that I'm referring to, we had to reduce that to $83,723,000, or a difference of $68,877 for the fiscal year 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So we have been providing, and this is, you know, IRS tax rules. I understand it's not policy, we're following the tax rules. But the businesses have benefited from a reduced corporate tax. We have had to deal with trying to stopgap that loss of revenue that we enjoyed. The big beautiful bill has permanentized that corporate tax rate. They haven't taken it down, but it's permanent now. So I just want to make sure that the body understands that it was not illegal. It actually has become statutorily, you know, the norm for all these years, and that the benefit to the corporations, you know, has been significant. And one final note, Governor Eddie Balzacalvo, I guess the more things change, the more they stay the same. When he transmitted this message to Speaker B.J. Cruz, he basically let it lapse into law, but he also referred to this budget bill as a broken budget bill. So I guess the term is not, you know, simply and exclusively held by the folks at ADLU, but has been used prior by Governor Eddie Balzacalvo. So again, it's not illegal, and we have seen a corporate tax rate drop since the implementation of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Yes.
There's also from DOA, they also have some information that we requested regarding the rainy day fund, sir. If we can get that.
Mr. Byrne?
Yes,
you got that
it's being
information?
Prepared. It's being prepared.
No, it's being prepared. Okay.
Yes.
And we'll have that this morning?
You should have it by lunchtime.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Byrne. So we're going to go ahead and continue on with our second round for questionings and comments for the panel. I'm going to go ahead and start off with Chairman Duenas.
Mr. Chair, and welcome back, everyone. First of all, I want to go to Mr. Byrne. I was a little concerned during the conversations around surrounding the discussion on tax refunds and your discussion on whether or not you would pay them out if you had reached the appropriation level. Mr. Byrne, I'll remind you that of 3 events at least where you didn't require an appropriation for payment of services or obligations by the government. My good colleague speaker last night asked you about the reimbursements that are not being done at Office of Civil Defense, and we believe that's close to $9 million over multiple fiscal years. And you've kept them afloat and paid those obligations. You also, in the 2023 audited revenues, or the 2023 single audit, shows that you had set aside $33 million for the self-insurance program. And you did not require an appropriation for that, and you set it aside, general fund revenues. Mr. Byrne, you also, and your team has been covering special funds for multiple fiscal years now that are in arrears without appropriations. You simply transfer between the general fund and those special funds and pay those obligations. Mr. Byrne, I don't take this lightly because I was there with the Vice Speaker and the Speaker in the 31st Guam Legislature when we were sitting in not this hall, but over at Hessler Place, and we were engaged in a super battle, much like probably what's going to continue here in this legislature, over having to find over $300 million to pay arrears tax refunds going back 3-4 years from that had accumulated in the government of Guam. Simultaneously with that, there was a court order that was issued because a case was taken up to the highest courts, district court, I believe. And I can tell you that that judge was unequivocal when that court order came out, that it's not my job to be concerned with the finances of the government of Guam. You will pay tax refunds on time, as due, within the time frame that was prescribed. I believe it was 6 months, full stop. So under oath and here on the record, I caution you, Mr. Byrne, to either correct your statement, or if you want to stand by that statement, that you will not authorize tax refund payments if they, for some reason, creep up above the appropriated level, and you will not pay them until you get an appropriation. Is that your statement on the record?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me what is obviously a necessary opportunity to clarify the whole matter. I saw your concern, so I looked up the Piesti case this morning. And what it requires is payment of tax refunds within 6 months of filing or 6 months following filing deadline, whichever comes later. So I cast my mind back to what happened when I first stepped into this position. And the first thing that happened was that the then chairman of the Appropriations Committee conditioned his support of my confirmation on the payment of tax refunds, even though I just stepped into the position. So I don't take it lightly either. And we have never omitted, or we have never, during the course of my tenure in this position, violated that provision. What generally happened was, because 6 months of filing is basically September, that any excess that needed to be funded that wasn't appropriated simply slipped into the following year. So the amounts that were attributed to one appropriation stopped, and the surplus, because it was much later in the financial year, slipped in to the following financial year. So it's not really a question of maybe it was not quite accurate to say stopping, but we stopped making a payment against a particular appropriation. But Chairman, if you're concerned about that, maybe you should consider increasing the provision in this budget bill.
So thank you for the clarification. That was really good news, because I think you'd have been in some damn hot water had you stopped paying tax refunds. So the reason why we're having this exercise, Mr. Byrne, is because very articulately and even on the record during the SCS, and I'll go to Marie now, and we can pull the tape, when the question was posed by OFB and the discussion of whether or not there could be some adjustment to this continuous over-appropriation for tax refunds to the tune of $30 to $40 million at 175, and the actual audited requirement has been coming out in the last 3 fiscal years at about 138 to 140, which is a gulf of $35 million, which looks like a savings account to me and many of my colleagues. The bottom line is that what you're saying to appropriate more, we still are at 145, and there's probably some room to go to 150. Still are very comfortable with what has been demonstrated, at least for the last 3 fiscal years. Marie, do you want to comment on that? Because your comments are on the record in the SCS.
So sorry. Okay, I'm sorry, sir. With regard to the SES and the appropriate amount, or please refresh my memory.
Yes, so to refresh your memory, maybe I'll go do it this way. I'll stand by for a moment. Mr. Guerrero, you brought this up, Director Guerrero, during the SCS meeting, and you had mentioned to the entire team, Lester as well as Marie, that you have done a run average on what tax refund provisions are required at appropriation levels, and you found a very disparate number with what we were setting aside versus what we were actually needing for the last 3 fiscal years. Can you restate what you said during the SCS meeting to Marie, and she concurred?
Good morning, Senator. Yes. Based on the information that was provided at the SCS meeting that day, I just looked at the information and was asking some questions regarding the numbers that were presented in the report. And in the report, it indicates that for the last 3-4 years, it showed a total amount of tax refunds that were processed and paid. And I looked at the totals, and the totals were averaging about $130, $135 million a year. So I just asked the question. I said, is this the amount that is being paid out for the last couple of years? Because it says process and return and paid. And the answer was yes. Then there's another line on the same report that showed a little bit higher amount, which about 140, 143, which noted that it's refunds and interest paid and owed. So that owed part is something that I would think that, it's still outstanding, it's not processed, it's still pending. That still needs to be paid. But it was a slightly higher figure than the one that was presented, on the same page on the lower part of the form. So I just asked the question, would it be safe to say that the average expenditures for the last couple of years will hover about 134? And the answer was yes. So that's how I derived at trying to determine how much tax refunds and were actually filed and paid, and kind of figured out from there, well then, if you've been averaging this for the last 3 or 4 years, is it safe to say that we can go forward? They didn't give me a straight answer yes, but again, they didn't say no. So that's how I came up with this recommended level.
So that's what transpired, Marie. So can you comment on that?
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. So if that was presented at the, and I'm sorry I don't recall my exact words, but if Mr. Guerrero had indicated that amount, and I had said that, that is certainly the average. So that's what I've said on record. I do know that on July 10th, I was contacted by someone at his office with regard to the amount of refunds or refunds that had or returns that had yet to be processed and expected to be paid. So I gave all that information on July 10th, and I don't know if that's just a what do you call that? It helped to have the OFB make that decision. I was certainly not part of that formula or that came up with that formula, but if he mentioned those figures, then I'm not going to refute that.
Fair enough, Marie. We'll pull the tape. Marie, I need to ask you this question because this is very critical. You manage the Department of Revenue Taxation. You got very good technical people who are following along during the year.
Yes.
At any time that you see a red light that, oh wow, for some reason we have these refunds that are tracking much higher, or the Trump typhoon has arrived, and we owe so much more in taxes. Wouldn't you alert the governor and alert the legislature that you need additional appropriation?
Yes, but actually part of the process anyway, the normal process, as I mentioned, is a refund summary is sent to Director Byrne, and he advises whether or not there is sufficient cash to be able to pay that out and have us run the check right.
So we would all see the blinking light in real time.
Yes.
Thank you, Marie. And thank you, Ed. I'm much more relieved that there is no time at which you would deny paying a tax refund.
I think we're all relieved because you seem comfortable there's enough appropriation to do so.
And I seem comfortable enough with the massive excess revenues that we've been pulling into this government that a few $1 million for tax refunds not going to be a hard thing to do. And I'm also very comfortable with most of the lapses that exist within all agencies, and I could start going down the line right now that there will be plenty of cash for that I can reappropriate. Thank you, Ed. So, Lester, you may have this answer. I'm looking at the public law 3722 that created all of this discussion about Simon Sanchez. Let's remind ourselves that 3722 was signed into law at 7/5/2023. There was mention on this floor that 2024, that's completely untrue. It's been 2 years and a month about since this became public law. The public law calls for the ability within 90 days to put out the RFP. When has the RFP gone out for Simon Sanchez?
I believe it went out either March or April of this year. Certainly not within 90 days.
March or April of this year. And they're currently in negotiations, from what I understand?
That's correct.
And they use this public law as their method of going forward in legality and form to do everything they're doing right now.
We're adhering to the Magaʹhågan Act as revised by 3722.
Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Vice Speaker, at this time, I ask for a 1-minute recess to ascertain the whereabouts of the invitation of Ms. Tina Garcia. All my other questions are directed for Ms. Garcia. So we can please go into a recess?
We'll take a 1-minute recess. Committee of the Whole is called back to order. Senator Lujan, you're recognized.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to yield my time to Senator Dueñas.
Okay, your time will be yielded to Senator Dueñas. You will no longer have a second round.
Thank you very much.
Senator Dueñas, you have additional 10 minutes added to your time.
Mr. Chair, and I wish the best for Ms. Tina Garcia. My understanding is she's not well today,
Okay.
but I'm very sure that Mr. Carlson and Mr. Byrne can handle this line of questioning, as they are part of the team that normally goes out for financing whenever they go to the bond market. So we just enumerated the public law and when it was enacted, Lester and Ed, and I've gone to the Section 5D108 financing, and I've found some interesting things in there. So, you know, I know you folks had to solicit your financing team's ultimate contracting team. That's already been pretty much understood. Lester, the public law gives you the authorization, correct, as we just discussed earlier, to go to market?
Yes, sir. So, but just to be clear, we need to take 58D108 and 58D109 cumulatively in this discussion.
Sure,
Okay.
no problem. I'm sure we're talking about the appropriation and also the ceiling of 166, I believe, or 168 million.
So, yeah, the 166 borrowing ceiling and the not to exceed annual appropriation of 16.3 million.
That's what I wanted you to say. So that will lead me to my next set of questions. So Lester, my read of the law puts this in a pre-development phase. Is that correct? So if we're going to do appropriation, we can do it in the pre-development stage.
If you're referring to 58D109, that basically states that $16,377,125 per year during the pre-development, construction, and leaseback period. So the leaseback is 30 years. The pre-development and construction period is 2 years. So we're talking about 32 years.
That's what I thought. Okay. So as we go along, then my read of the law also states this. Now this is the trigger here that I'm concerned with, and we've been fighting over, and I'm really surprised because we're now in our third fiscal year since this became public law, and so this is why when I looked at this and I'm saying, man, my read of the law also states this body could have made up to $16.3 million in appropriations to go towards all of these things. Capitalized interest, building fund, etc. We could have been doing that since this public law because of this authorization when it first became law, correct?
It wouldn't have been prudent.
Wouldn't have been prudent?
No, because this section here basically says that once you get your team together, you've selected the best offer, and you're going to go to the bond market, the authorization under 58D108 allows for the $166 million par, which would result in about $16 million in capitalized interest for the first 2 years, a deposit into the construction fund of about $143 million. From that $143 million, and as Senator Borja is well aware, the Department of Education originally said they could handle the cost for the FF&E. Because of their issues with U.S. Department of Education and their ARP money, they are not. So you have to take 143 minus 9 million for the FF&E, minus 1% for the arts. That's a requirement. So the construction amount went down to like 132.9. And when we came before the body to get authorization, we actually showed you the base bid at 136. That's how come I've been very consistent, despite what other senators might be saying, about the need to be able to try to get the additional funding to mitigate either the capitalized interest cost that's embedded in the borrowing or a $16 million appropriation for the pre-development costs. Because, again, do we want to give the sharks an aquarium or a tank? And that's where it really is. You know, we want to give them the school. Right now, we are constrained by cost escalations in construction, the length of time that you so adequately and very clearly have stated has lapsed. So the cost needs to be adjusted. When I said yesterday, We would like to be able to have this as a prerequisite to going to financing, because then we could say, okay, we have this additional $60 million to put into the account and either mitigate the cap-I or elevate the amount for construction, and it's consistent with the law. All we're asking for is the ability to take the passage of time, the escalation in construction costs, and mitigate it so the Sharks get a school that we could all be proud of.
I understand that. I understand that, Lester, but you, the governor, the entire team has been out there saying absolutely unequivocally the Sharks home is going to get underway in this year and the time, but yet you didn't put it in your EBR.
Why was that? For the third time, sir. When you can't hold us responsible, me personally, for something that requires an appropriation when we didn't even put the RFP on the street.
Lester, that's not right, because that's not the way that this reads. So the bottom line is what you're saying then is that you made the claim that you were going to build the home of the Sharks, but yet you didn't put that EBR in your. You knew already. You said you were going to be doing this RFP within this year. You could have put it in your EBR.
Sir, all the comments that I've made have been this calendar year regarding Simon Sanchez. I never said anything to you or anybody else last year before the EBR came out about we're putting up, because I'm not responsible for the issuance of the RFP. That's not my thing.
Who's responsible for the issuance of the RFP?
I believe it's DPW, sir.
So where was DPW screaming at us, hey, you need to make sure that this appropriation, is in the, Governor, you need to make sure this appropriation is there because you want to build the home of the Sharks, and the bottom line is we're going to need this because this is going to get us the Lexus or the tank.
Yes. And I have
and not the aquarium.
And I have said that to you in at least 2 public hearings. I have been on the record asking you for this. And
you could have adjusted your EBR.
Sir, these
Lester?
discussions were after the EBR. After.
It just, to me, shows an absolute lack of commitment to say that right now that this legislature is responsible for this and you didn't put it in your EBR. I think that is absolutely unacceptable. If
Sir,
your commitment was there, you would have put it in
opinion.
your EBR.
I don't agree with it, but you're entitled to your opinion.
Okay, so let's go forward now to dispel all this myth that, oh, there was no appropriation. So you agree it's a total myth that we can't go to market. This law lets us go to market.
Do you want a fish tank?
No. That's not the question I'm asking you. No,
Yes,
No, it's not. No, it's not, Lester. No, it's not, and here's why. Because the bottom line is that if we're going to do this by the time you go to market, which you're not in market right now, by the time you go, and you enumerated earlier, we're looking at about 5 months to the time that you go in and actually probably have to have this debt service. If that appropriation is in place within that time, and the 2 years lapse, this fiscal year coming up and the next fiscal year, we would have done everything you're asking for, because you're saying it wouldn't have been prudent to put it in there when this law would have allowed it, because I got that from the market folks myself. The day this was enacted, you could have been putting money in the bank if you wanted to.
If you wanted to, because you hold the purse strings.
That's right. But this legislature, everybody who's jumping up and down to claim that they're the biggest shark lover on Guam, never put that appropriation in 24. Never put that appropriation in 25.
And we're asking for it in 26.
I got it. And it's going to be there. At least, this legislature right now recognized it.
All right, sir. But I can't go to market with a promise.
I understand.
I need it now.
Are you going to market tomorrow?
When we conclude the negotiations, then we are going to be able to fast track the financing, and we will be probably able to get this done by October. I mentioned that the other day. I don't want to argue with you, sir. I want to just be able to just dumb it down to say, the authorization allows for this. We're just asking you for
I got you. But the thing is you say you don't want to argue with me, yet people in this legislature and the front office are standing on the mountaintops claiming that this budget and this legislature now is the scapegoat and the one responsible for all this impending doom and an aquarium at your house, of a 2x2, as opposed to going down you know, to Tumon and seeing the big aquarium down there in Aqua World or whatever else, and we're responsible for the one at the house because of this budget, it's disingenuous. And that's where I'm saying, you all say you want to work with us. You don't want to argue with us. You don't want to argue. Yet that's not working with us when you're putting out there, when this legislature has failed in fiscal year 2024, has failed in just fiscal year 2025. And the EBR has failed to recognize it in the budget request from the governor in 2026.
Okay, sir. Again, I don't want to argue, but when I asked you twice in public hearings, and I said, we'd like for you to include the $16 million, and you unequivocally said it will be in the budget.
It is in the budget. It's a placeholder right now, and we're going to get the money for it. I'm going to go to Mr. Guerrero. Mr. Guerrero, why didn't we include Simon Sanchez in the fiscal year 2026 request?
Is your question why we did not include it?
Correct.
My understanding, Senator, is because given the current passage of laws in the past, we were under the impression that those laws actually gave the administration, or it gave the authorization to go ahead and finance up to $60 million, which was required. And it's the amount that has been tossed around, you know, for the last couple of years. And being that those laws are already in existence, we didn't want to convolute the whole thing again and put another language in there and it says, oh, here, by the way, here's another 16 million, when we already knew that the authorization was there to do it.
So, Mr. Guerrero, let's talk about what really is going on here, because you've been on both sides of this issue. You've served as a BBMR director before, too, and you know what it means to go to market. What we're really talking about here is because it took so long to get that RFP out, and we all know what's going on in the world. We all know what's going around on this island. Anybody who's even tried to build a shack knows what it costs to build something on this island. What has happened is the passage of time, because of the passage of time, it's a presidential allusion, what has happened is this cost has ballooned. Yet this law that was passed is locked in at $168 million and $16.3 million for debt service. Isn't that correct?
Senator, I'm not going to dispute anything Mr. Carlson said, and what he said is all part of the process of securing a bond on the market. I can't comment on the length and time that has elapsed since the passage of the law, but I can tell you that, yes, every day that we postpone or we hold back or not do something, especially when it comes to big projects in the millions, it is escalating every day to an amount that, gosh, just 1 year is going to make a substantial difference in the initial cost of any project that we first start at any given time. I mean, you're right. I mean, I'm sure they would agree that, you know, in the passage of time, cost of any type of construction is going to escalate, especially nowadays.
So this legislature is not the one that right now is on the hook for an aquarium at your house versus GameWorks down in Tumon. It was created by economic conditions and the fact that we'll probably, hopefully, be going to market in October, 2 years and 4 months after this law passed. Would that be fair? You've gone to the market before with the fiscal team, right?
Senator, the only thing I'll say is, if I want to reference this particular project, this particular, is yes, time has elapsed. It's been 2 years and a couple of months since the initial passage of the law. And Mr. Carlson just mentioned that hopefully, and he kind of assured us that hopefully by October, this thing will be kicked off the ground and we'll see some real movement on the building of Simon Sanchez High School. And the only thing I can say, sir, is like I said, every day that goes by, it's going to cost this government money. And until such time we execute what authorization is given, that cost is going to go up.
So, because this is our job, Mr. Guerrero, are you absolutely confident that when the time comes, because we've put the provision already and recognized it in the miscellaneous provisions in our bill, and the time comes that Public Works and the administration says the sharks are swimming, that we will be able to go in and make an appropriation to make sure we start the ball rolling for this?
Senator, I can't speak on behalf of the executive branch and what their plans are
No,
doing.
us.
But as far as this legislature is concerned, I believe we've done basically at least the basic thing that needs to get this project done. The authorization, the funding, the sources, and whatever else is needed. I mean, I hope maybe the administration will come back and say, hey, we need this and we need that. But I think initially, just to get it going, I think everything is in place for now.
Mr. Guerrero, we have now, and I believe they're sustainable appropriations as per Mr. Byrne, we have put in the miscellaneous provisions around $15.8 million of audited revenues from 2023. I think we need to change some terminology, but it's the terminology we've been using to appropriate unaudited excess revenues throughout, so we'll change the nomenclature. That's an easy amendment, but wouldn't it be nice if we had a 2024 audit right now to see if there was any funds there?
It would be nice, Senator, to have that document and that information now. Realistically, it's not going to happen, and I don't think it's going to come up before we pass this budget bill. But the only thing we can go now is basically what's reflected in the CER report and use that as the official document to at least give us some sort of information, at least financially, where we stand today. I recognize it's unaudited, yes, and I've always been very careful about using unaudited revenues. But, you know, at least for the last couple of years, we've been doing that. And with the exception, I believe, of 2023, when we kind of like went over just a little bit, I just will caution the body that, you know, doing anything with 2024 other than what we've done already thus far, I would suggest and highly maybe recommend that we just kind of hold the line until such time the audit does come out.
So, you know, Mr. Guerrero, we've heard throughout this whole back and forth about appropriation of excess revenue within the fiscal year, even within the same fiscal year, not even waiting for the fiscal year to stop because there's been so much, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of $1 million. And this debates that happened in the 24th and the 25th Guam Legislature, or fiscal years, I mean, it was raging in here in terms of the appetite to go out and appropriate. Even, in fact, there's even a bill right now to continue the power credit and the like. And we've had Lester on the record saying, man, you know, talk about a Lexus, you know, we could have had a Bentley, you know, if we used that money and then had a, you know, a small port. We probably could have, instead of that, never mind, we could have 3 additional Lexuses, right? GW maybe, all the other repairs we're supposed to be doing. But we didn't. But, you know, the thing is, Mr. Guerrero, we threw caution to the wind, you know, for those kind of things. I think that, you know, when the time comes, we're talking about working together, Lester. You know, Ed, fiscal team, you know, work with us. I think we're all big boys and girls in here that we could sit down and say, hey, you know, yeah, in all of this $1.35 billion that we may appropriate, you've done this for a long time, Mr. Guerrero. Do you think it would be impossible, now that we've earmarked that revenue and the miscellaneous provisions, to do the final appropriation with that kind of appropriation authority?
Senator, the only thing I can tell you right now is that whatever balances that are available, to appropriate for whatever project we want to, this body decides to appropriate, you know, I assume you'll do it in the best interest of the people of Guam. And if this is one of those projects that needs to be funded, then by all means, we'll fund it. If it's not a priority for the people of Guam, then I'm sure the list is long. We all know it's long. But I'm not going to sit here and debate whether or not what projects are priority. That's not my job. My job is to ensure this body that there are available monies for these projects to be funded. And that's how I've always approached, you know, my job as OIB director, to provide the essential information to ensure that this body makes its genuine type of decisions when it comes to appropriate money for the government of Guam.
So we're not in church right now, but that was the amen and the hallelujah that I was looking for. Mr. Chair, I can tell you right now, we did not appropriate that money in 2024. We did not appropriate that money in 2025. It wasn't in the EBR. Damn it, we're going to get that money. And the only sharks that are swimming right now are people that want to put fear out there and to get political points because they don't want to do a tax reduction. And all these red herrings that are all over the place are designed, they are by design, Mr. Chair, to try to load an already super loaded appropriation authority. Every governor, every legislature, like Mr. Guerrero just said, must choose priorities. There are many wants, but at the core of those wants are needs. That's what our people expect. So anybody who sits in this hall and says, with the record on their hands of not having appropriated that money, that they're not going to work to prioritize the home of the sharks and other priorities within this government with this budget because of a 0.5% tax rebate rollback? I don't know, man. But I don't consider that doing work in this body. And I don't consider that doing work to serve the people. Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, if you can, go ahead, Mr. Carlson.
Mr. Guerrero, if I could ask, if I understood what you just said, you were referring to excess revenues available that the body could utilize their discretion and prioritization of critical needs to make an appropriation from. You weren't talking about the transfer authority, if I'm correct. Is that correct?
I believe the question that was posed to me is in reference to the available balance of the excess. So my response was based on the excess, not that governor's transfer.
And I'll clarify my statement, Mr. Carlson. Absolutely. So I put it to you. I'm going to give you the number of what transfer authority is going to be at 50%. You say executive branch agencies, it's a significant number, Mr. Carlson. But I get you. I understand prudent policy, that you want to wait until the end of the fiscal year where you true up all your expenditures. You should kind of know that because Ed Burns said now, you know, he's got a Cadillac Bentley system in terms of the FMIS. He told me at the meeting with you guys at the governor's office that, man, it's working like a charm. We could see real day expenditures versus, you know, appropriation levels. Real time. That's why we spent how many millions of dollars on that Bentley. I don't think it's that hard to predict, but you know what? I'll meet you on that. See if that's the priority when the time comes. Even excess revenues that are going to end up when this fiscal year stops. If we've done it for everything else, doggone it, we can do it for the sharks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Gumatao, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Director Guerrero, for the benefit of those in our community that are following today, can you state again for the record what the adopted budget across all fund sources was for fiscal year 2025, not including the supplemental funding provided through Public Law 37-135, which was passed by the last legislature on October 24, 2024, less than 30 days after the fiscal year started?
Senator, I will refer to Public Law 37-125. The total amount available for appropriation was $906,464,877.
Thank you so much. Additionally, and to help clarify whether your office is proposing substantial cuts to what the governor of Guam is asking for next fiscal year, what was the governor's FY2026 budget request across all fund sources, and how does APPROPRIATIons's request compare to OFB's FY2026 budget proposal across all fund sources?
Senator, the figure I quoted you was strictly general fund, but I'll clarify because you're saying across all fund sources, which includes special fund and federal match, correct? That's what you want. Okay. For FY25, the total bottom line for all sources is $1,308,834,401. Okay? That's for all sources. What's requested in the governor's executive budget is $1,357,601,551. That's the governor's executive request.
Thank you. This is for anyone on this side of the panel. According to the latest American Rescue Plan report, as of July 31st, 2025, there was a balance of $436,511 from the original allocation of $618 million, 618 and change, in state and local fiscal recovery funds provided to Guam, courtesy of the federal taxpayer. How exactly is the administration intending to use any portion of the remaining 430,000 and change in ARP funds to cover what BBMR references as major reductions in OFB's FY2026 budget proposal, compared to the FY26 executive budget request, recognizing that funds have been prioritized according to your ARP report to pay for food services for DOC inmates and detainees at $482,000, medical services for DOC's population at $279,000, DOA computer software at $1.5 million, technical support for DRT at $379,000, Zoom subscriptions, video production services for sexual assault awareness and human trafficking, which is about $6,000, and so many more expenditures that were COVID or non-COVID related. Anybody want to take a...
Just a reminder, Senator, the deadline for obligating use of those funds was December 31st.
Right.
We cannot move any of those funds outside of eligible uses after December 31st. So what we have remaining that you see available balances for, they were prohibited from transferring it to any other eligible use. So they need to be expended for the use that they were originally identified for. And we need to expend those monies by December 31st, 2026. So we can't move any of those monies.
Is there any urgency to spend those?
Yeah, December 31st, 2026.
I guess let the turtle continue to move on Guam. Can someone on the panel share some maturity dates for me, if you could? I see it, Mr. Chair, on different parts of the Budget Act, but I just wanted to get some dates. Can someone tell me what is the maturity date for the limited obligation bond, business privilege tax bond series 2012B? This is number A on the list. Anybody can tell me what the maturity date is?
There's a debt abstract on the GITA website. It has all that information per bond. It tells you what the maturity dates are for every issue that is outstanding.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm asking for the record. Can someone give me the maturity dates for these bonds?
If we had that report, we could read it to you, sir.
Okay. Mr. Byrne, you're flying through your documents. Do you have them somewhere nearby?
It should appear in the audit.
Want to take a recess to figure this out? Please? Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
We'll take a 1-minute recess. Legislature's back from recess.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne.
The schedule in here doesn't split it out by individual issues, but for the limited obligation bonds, which is basically the BPT bonds, the maturity dates, the payment dates, the maturity range from 2024 to 2047.
2047. Okay. What about so that's just for the 2012B. What about the 2016A? Is that any help there?
This includes all, like I said, this includes all the limited obligation bonds. They're not split out.
So all of the bonds will mature in 2047, all the BPT bonds?
They mature up to 2047.
Up to?
For example, the 2012 is normally a 30-year maturity, so you could peg that at 2042.
So the two are 30-year bonds? Okay, thank you. That's what I was trying to get. Thank you. Okay. Let me just, Marie, if I can, and DRT, I just wanted to, because I know that our friends up at ADALOOP are watching this, but I want to focus on much of the testimony yesterday and the lovely graphics that were presented as we were engaging here. And this is the 680 taxpayers who paid $2 million. Now, I appreciate ADALOOP and their fancy graphics to help to try to draw a wedge in this community in this particular budget process. And I'm surprised they left out the 452 taxpayers that on the record you mentioned yesterday in the report between 1 million and 2 million in income, or the other 619 taxpaying citizens who pay between 500,000 and 1 million just above the Dave Santos amendment. This is 1,751 taxpaying businesses and individuals who fund over 1/3 of the general fund revenue, the same 1,751 businesses who employ a majority of the 51,900 people on this island, or 77% of the total workforce. These are all taxpayers, all of them. And you know, DRT, I asked, some of my colleagues asked, the chairman on finance asked, for the figures that were presented yesterday on more than one occasion, just across the hall. It finally gets here. Can you please explain what was the delay in getting this particular report? I know I asked it for Bill 11, and on the record I went back to, it was not issued as part of the report for Bill 11. And I think we asked for 3 other policies here. I know that you mentioned it a bit, but why the delays?
When we decided to prepare the report, we did so, we released general figures. What came back to us from 1 or 2 of the senators was, can you provide specific details? So Carolyn, who is with me today, she's a tax enforcement administrator. She's the person that ran the reports. And when the request came back for actual details, unfortunately, she had to deal with she had to go on bereavement leave, and so forth. And so, it all depends. I think part of the complication, if you will, is ensuring that what you're asking for is really what we're going to give you, because as she can attest, when we run these reports, the problem is it's between fiscal year, calendar year. We have to do these things carefully. We also want to make sure that what we're giving you is as close to accurate as possible. So we prepared it as best we could, and then the details had to come later, and unfortunately, we just kind of, we have that. So we didn't have it at that time.
Yes, thank you for that explanation. But I do also, for the record, can you clarify what was presented yesterday? You made many references to making and grossing revenues. Those are two very distinct, different things.
Correct.
And I think the whole of the community is a bit confused.
Okay.
Help us, and I don't want the whole technical aspect, but when you say make and gross, what you presented was gross, if I'm not mistaken.
If I may, I'll have Carolyn answer that.
So what I read out to you yesterday, based on Senator Perez's question, was to determine the variation between gross income versus sales proceeds versus net income. Now, the law that I read out yesterday connects the 5% to that gross income. If I can just pull it up real quick to give you an example so it's easier to...
Oh, no. That's not necessary. I think this community, when they were listening to DRT yesterday and what you were explaining, it really had people just confused.
Okay.
Well, no, and I'm not an accountant, and
Yeah.
and I
So
didn't
let me
sleep at a
try
Holiday
to-
Inn. Hold on, let me just say that I think that when we talk about the gross income, and all we were asking for was that yesterday, when you start to use the phrases making and the like, that's what's been causing this problem and this rift in this community. So if you can be very simple
Okay, I'll
and
do my
clarify,
best.
because it's really important for all of us here.
Got it. The law that I read out yesterday describes the 5% rate be applied at those gross quantities or amounts. However, I had to clarify after I realized what wasn't clarified, what I didn't clarify, is the 5% is actually applied on the taxable after the exemption is removed from the gross component.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to hear. Thank you. It was very helpful. On the specific issue of federal funding cuts and BBMR's caution for the legislature to not compound the situation by restoring the 4% BPT rate, which was increased to 5% against the laws of Guam, what guidance has BBMR or the Guam State Clearinghouse received from the delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives and your federal counterparts, and any additional funding that may be required in FY2026?
The clearinghouse has not directly received any information from the delegate's office.
Okay. And your federal counterparts?
Our federal counterparts
For FY2026?
For FY26, that's the letter that's being prepared that I'm trying to get it done, but we're here. We know for sure public broadcasting is affected. We know for sure EPA and coastal zone management are also affected, and historic preservation. The FY26 budget that was passed in the Congress zeroes out those sums. So we do know that those are affected. We are re-verifying. I was sharing with one of the other senators this morning that at 3 a.m. I received another email saying, please pause activity on this grant until we give you further information. So it's just further problems on problems where they're not sure what we're doing. But for the most part, we know for 26, because of the way funding cycles work, most of the funding, federal funding for FY26 is intact. It's just these small ones. When I say small, it's still several $1 million, but it's small in comparison to the overall budget and how much federal receipts we actually get.
All right, thank you, Stephanie.
Yes.
In addition to a statement on document page 18 of the FY26 executive budget requests, the GVB's arrival forecast for fiscal year 2024 shows expected increases during the coming year, likely continuing through 2025 and beyond. The BBMR director stated during the July 3rd, 2025 special economic service meeting on potential impacts of federal budget cuts prior to the passage of BBB that other than that, right now the future is so bright we got to wear shades. What exactly has changed between the level of optimism shared at the July 3rd, 2025 SES meeting and the August 11th, 2025 letter from BBMR to this branch? And more importantly, what has BBMR done in the form of documented revisions or amendments to the FY26 executive budget request so that adjustments to agency budget requests and appropriations are made consistent with the fiscal environment that BBMR now anticipates may not be so bright, which to me suggests that we might have to break out umbrellas instead?
My optimism has not changed. I wish my transition lenses could go dark so you would see that it is still a big, beautiful economy that we're all enjoying. What I said, Senator, was other than the tourism lag in recovery, the future's so bright, I gotta wear shades. Nothing has changed. Look at his bill and look at the governor's EBR. What are we, $6 million apart total? Hello? If that ain't bright, I don't know what is bright. So, hey, I'm as optimistic as I can possibly be without jumping out of my chair.
Thank you so much for that. And just one thing, Mr. Chair, if I can, is we hear about this the whole of this construction of Simon Sanchez, and been around doing a school construction or several in my experience too. When we look at the GDOE's school facilities master plan that was proffered in I believe it's 2022 in June, it talks about deferred maintenance and all these things. And as we look at the cost and the number that was proffered prior to me even being a part of this, I just wanted to make note that $16 million was the number that was needed back in 2022 to basically get Simon Sanchez back and running. And I appreciate all the debate and Shark Tank and Shark Aquarium or whatever the hell you want to call it. I think that we as a society, when we think about the construction of schools, we are adults trying to build a facility for high school students. And I think that there's been designs and money that was burnt on JFK that could have been used for this, and that's my 2 cents, but also to make sure that they are in line with plans to include this June 22 GDOE facility master plan. Mr. Chair, thank you for the time, and I appreciate the panel again.
Sidus Masi, and yes, we are $7 million less than the governor's request, and also a $41 million rebate to the taxpayers of Guam through a rollback of 0.5 of the BPT. So we're off by that because we have started the transition to reducing budgets. Mr. Barnett, Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Sidus Wasi, Mr. Chair, Manana Sidus to the people of Guam. Thank you for watching this morning, and thank you for the panel for joining us after that late evening. Sidus Masi. Wow. Just kind of recapping the events. So yesterday, we started this budget session with a few of my colleagues ranting and raving about how we didn't need this $16.3 million for Simon Sanchez and how it wasn't a big deal that it wasn't included in the budget. And so to see some of this finger pointing that was going on this morning, my grandma had a saying, every time you point a finger at somebody, you have 3 pointing back at you. And so I kind of enjoyed one of my colleagues blaming the executive branch for not including this debt service in the budget bill when they themselves also didn't include it in the budget bill. And so maybe there's just a lack of commitment all around, but I am relieved this morning now that there's been a sudden change of heart for the Sharks. And now we are hearing that, yes, Mr. Carlson, the money is needed. Can we just start there? The $16.3 million, Mr. Carlson, just yes or no? Do we need that to move forward with the construction of the home of the Sharks?
Yes.
Okay, and so that seems to be, again, the big 180 from yesterday is now we have the good chairman admitting that, yes, he was remiss to not include this funding in the budget and that it will now be remedied with some type of appropriation. I did have an amendment, a couple of amendments prepared to fund this because, at the end of the day, we've all been in here, we voted for that bill to build the new Sanchez, and these students, generations of them have been shortchanged. And so I'm very glad that now there's an admission by this body that, yes, we need to fund that $16.3 million in debt service so that we can move forward with the construction of the home of the Sharks. And I really hope it's a great home for the Sharks. So I think that's a win, and I'm very glad that a lot of the pressure from the Sharks community when they found out that this majority was shortchanging them, I think there were calls made to offices about including this funding and renewing and having that commitment to the home of the Sharks. So that's good news, and I'm very glad to hear that. I wanted to kind of talk about the BPT as we did yesterday very extensively, and I think there was a criticism that I didn't understand how business works, and that criticism may be correct in that I have a hard time understanding these large sums of money that we talk about when we talk about just revenues that are generated by these big corporations that are going to enjoy this 0.5% business privilege tax reduction, which I'm not necessarily opposed to in principle. I just don't think the time is right, and I think if we entertain a meaningful application of the BPT to include a tiered system where we have, reductions tied to the amount of monies that are generated by these corporations, I think that's the best way to move forward. In this budget that attempts to contemplate trimming the fat, and one of my doctor friends had told me yesterday that, Gov Guam is obese, we need to trim the fat. And I would just respond by saying, this bill is a decapitation. It is not a tummy tuck. We talk about trimming the fat in the government. We should do it with a brain. This is something that we've done before where we looked at years of service with employees. We allowed them to early out on their retirement. And so I agree there are ways that we can meaningfully downsize, right-size, whatever the buzzword is on the other side of the aisle, the government of Guam. But I think forcing this $40 million reduction in revenues because we are so eager to hand out these corporate tax breaks, it's like I said, we're getting cut off at the feet by the federal government, and we're in here trying to chop off our own hands. So I kind of wanted to talk about the other benefits that a lot of these corporations are going to receive on the federal side with President Trump and a lot of these things that we talk about necessitated the increase in the BPT. These conditions exist today, but in many ways, they are worse. And so I wanted to ask just Director Lizama, what other types of benefits to these corporations are in place via the Trump administration?
If you're talking specifically about the One Big Beautiful bill or act, or I should say, DRT actually did, or our analysis was really geared toward individual. Director Byrne did an analysis with the corporate aspect. So he may have more information with regard to that. If I may, sir, with regard to your comment about perhaps coming up with a tiered level with regard to the BPT, the only thing the team and I ask is that whatever this body passes, is that you ensure we do have the funds to be able to carry it out administratively, because it may result in a reprogramming. You know, we need to work with our vendor. We need to work probably with the Office of Technology. And, you know, we will need ample time to ensure that there's a transition.
Thank you for that, Director Lizama. And yeah, I was listening yesterday with some of the questioning from one of my colleagues talking about how you would need more staff to meet whatever mandates we pass in this bill, yet I'm pretty sure you got a status quo budget. So if we could just switch gears a little bit and talk about your budget that's contained in this bill, does that allow you to execute some of the things that my colleagues are trying to implement?
Well, as I mentioned, you know, the shortage in the BPT branch is, you know, augmented by the employees from other branches, you know, and so forth. So we've been doing okay so far. We expect, I mean, whatever the case, we're going to just trudge along. And we have also implemented some overtime plans to ensure that we do get to the other things that we're not able to get through to during the day. So, you know, we've always made, you know, do. We're going to continue to do that. We may not be able to implement some things that, you know, have been decades, you know, old problems, you know, and so forth, but we're going to try. And we are confident that if we chip away, we will eventually be able to at least get to a point where, you know, we are able to, you know, effectively carry out our duties.
Thank you for your optimism, but I wish you would just be a little more realistic in what this budget proposes, not just for the Department of Revenue and Taxation. I'm trying to wrap my mind around some of the stuff and the rhetoric that was offered back during the campaign, rhetoric about improving government services. Rhetoric about not maintaining the status quo, yet what we have here is, it's like I said, it's a status quo budget for the agencies, no anticipation of organic growth, and we're proffering this 0.5% tax discount, which is leading to $40 million in lost revenue, and we're sitting here scrambling, trying to figure out how to make up for that, while not acknowledging that minusing that $40 million is going to greatly impact public services, you know.
That is correct. I mean, you know, and even you know, as we sit and we discuss among ourselves, you know, we are also forgetting that that one big beautiful act is going to result in a $8 million fiscal impact on the individual side, and then nearly 10 million on the corporate side. So yeah, we, you know, I guess it's really all just the uncertainty of it. Just.
I agree. And just going back to what you said about the tax refunds, because there was also a lot of discussion in here about averaging out the last few fiscal years and coming up with a number, 135, 140, whatever it is. And obviously the big issue is the upcoming fiscal year is going to be different from the last few. And if you could just reiterate for the record, because I'm not sure if my colleagues have heard why this reduction in the funding for tax refunds, they're defunding your refunds, my dear people of Guam, why this is significant for this upcoming fiscal year.
Well, you know, again, you know, we don't know what the true impact is going to be with regard to what was federally passed. And so, you know, we didn't have that at that time, right, when figures were first calculated. So that, again, is the uncertainty that's rather concerning. You know, with regard to income tax returns, we can give an estimate, and you know, while it was pointed out that I had agreed to something in the SES, and I'm not going to deny that, you know, I likely said that, you know, situations change, right? This is not, especially where our agency is concerned, there are things that change constantly. We're always affected by any legislation that's passed, and, you know, we simply have to comply. That's what we do.
Thank you, Director Lizama. Mr. Byrne, you know, yesterday during questioning, I believe, from Senator Terlahi, you had talked about the challenges posed by this reduction in funding for tax refunds, and you had said on the record that basically we're going to run out of money to pay these tax refunds with this appropriation level and this set-aside that's included in the bill.
Not that we're going to, we may run out of money. So
can you say that?
There are two elements to this. One, it's not running out of money, but there are two elements to this, right? There's a $12 million difference between what we would calculate the tax refunds to be, taking into account of the federal receipts.
Point of information, Mr. Chair. In the Big Beautiful Bill, there is a new deduction for individuals who are age 65 and older who may claim an additional deduction of $6,000 in addition to the current standard deductions. So there is going to be a much greater need for withholding.
Yes, I look forward to claiming that.
Thank you,
myself.
Senator. You can address that during your time, but we take the point of order.
I thank my colleague.
Can I start again?
Yeah. Stand by. I just want to thank my colleague from Mongwan Tumaiti for that good piece of information. So basically, we might need more money. But just going back to, so if we shortchange you in this budget, and we say that this is what you have to pay the people of Guam's tax refunds, and it's not enough, and you run out of funds, I don't know what my colleagues expect you to do. They expect you to like search the couch cushions and
Yeah, let me please backtrack to where I was. So there's a difference of 12 million in, and I think it's just a computational error that the gross amount was reduced, but the offsets weren't reduced. So I think it's just a computational error of 12 million. In addition to that, we've made an assessment of what we think these tax regulations that have been changed in the Big Beautiful Bill will do to our tax receipts. And I'm not clear as to whether those have been taken account of in this assessment in this bill or not. But if they've not, and we have to bear them, yes, we're going to run up and perhaps exceed that amount of appropriation.
So when we do run out of the money to pay the tax refunds, that would require us to go into session and appropriate funds. And I just worry about the timeline because this 38th Guam Legislature has demonstrated that we don't want to be in session every month. We're going in every other month. So potentially, when we run out of these funds for the people of Guam's tax refunds, it could be 2 months, 3 months, longer before we're able to come in and pass an appropriation.
Over the last few years, as Mr. Sama was saying, we've always found the cash to pay the refunds and pay the refunds timely. And taxpayers have got used to that routine. And if we're a day or two late, both she and I get a whole lot of calls. And so we've changed our system to make it more efficient, and we now get these tax refunds out within a week. I think people's expectations will be dashed if we don't continue that process.
For me, it's a non-negotiable. It's a non-negotiable, just like Simon Sanchez. We shouldn't be debating whether or not we have to do these things because we have to. I wanted to ask Director Lizama, kind of said you might have more information on this, Mr. Byrne, but just about, so in talking with some of my constituents yesterday, they were describing this BPT reduction as a cherry on top of the reductions and the tax breaks that we're seeing from the Trump administration, because let's be honest, it's not like the Trump administration is making it hard for people to do business. I mean, they're throwing the wheels off regulations. They're handing out all kinds of like corporate tax benefits. So can you kind of just go over, Mr. Byrne, if you could, some of the corporate benefits we're seeing on the federal government side? Just because I kind of want to offset the BBT discount, because I believe that the conditions for doing business and what Trump is doing, he's creating a better environment for these businesses. And I think that if people know that, then maybe there's less validity to this idea that multi-million dollar corporations out there are quote unquote struggling?
I think there are three main benefits that corporations stand to gain out of this bill. The biggest one, I think Ms. Flores mentioned it yesterday, is the bonus depreciation, which effectively allows you to expense your capital expenditure again, right, as well as expensing it over the years. The second benefit is an adjustment to the cap on interest deductions, which has been raised by including other elements in the calculation. And the third is the increase in the 179 deduction, which is another basic expensing of capital expenditure. All these provisions effectively reduce corporate taxable income and therefore the amount of tax that the corporation has to pay on a particular year.
So it sounds like they'll be doing pretty good. And this BBT discount would really just be a cherry on top of the already immense benefits that these corporations are receiving from the federal government side. And just friendly reminder, they can afford it. The federal government can afford it. I'm not sure we can afford erasing the $40 million in revenue, especially if we're going to be running around like chickens in here with our heads cut off trying to figure out how to fill in the gaps.
Perhaps I should also add that that was just corporations. There are a lot of pass-through income type businesses that I guess will also benefit.
So basically the bottom line is we're not giving you enough money to pay out these tax refunds, and we're going to have to be paying out more because of a lot of these tax things going on the federal government side, and we're facing the very real potential of running out of money to pay people's tax refunds because my colleagues have chosen to prioritize this tax discount for the biggest of the biggest businesses.
It's certainly possible. We've made an assessment. We asked, the OFB to consider our assessment.
I just had one last question because I feel like some of my colleagues who have oversight of some of these agencies that are getting hit in this budget, like the Guam Department of Education, healthcare, we're doing a lot of talking, sticking up for these corporations, but not much for the agencies. So what's your read on this budget for the Guam Department of Education, and what are your thoughts on the extra monies that are going to have to be ponied up potentially for this ARP reimbursement scheme and the refurbishment of the schools?
It's clear that some agencies do better than others, right? I mean, we've had a lot of talk about lapses, but that's not every agency. That's some agencies, and probably is due to some measure of miscalculation or misunderstanding on their part. As far as DOE is concerned, they generally appear to be in a position to spend all their funds. We've got obviously a concern, because it's an audit concern that's holding up the audit, about the recapture of their federal expenditures. And again, I can't quantify that because that's what the audit is doing at this minute. So, and as Ms. Flores said, there are a number of agencies who have had grants curtailed or actually suddenly terminated. So a whole new assessment needs to be done. It's an ongoing process that we're getting this information from the federal government, and it requires all of us to look very carefully at departmental budgets, and especially those that rely upon federal grants, and especially those that have the large grants like the welfare programs at public health and behavioral health.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne, for that answer. And just on the subject of grants, I don't know if Stephanie can answer this, but is it possible for you to shake the tree and generate $40 million in grants to replace the lost revenue that's going to happen if we give these big corporations a tax break?
Oh, are you asking me if we could do that overnight?
It's more of a rhetorical question because I know my colleagues are talking a lot about grants, and maybe they're thinking that you can get $40 million in grants and everything will be okay.
Senator, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The answer is no.
Susmasi, clarify a couple of misstatements, or at least clarification. We're 10 million over the accepted revenues for 2025. And the sharks have always been able to go out. It's the 2 years of lag time that's caused the construction costs, and the 16 million is going to help with that. Those are the facts. I have a speaker here that I really, really enjoy, that he's our speaker, that I know can call us into session within 2 hours. So we're sufficiently set.
Or you could just put the money in the bill, and we don't have to come back and play all these funny games.
Yeah, that every other month is...
So you're basically admitting your bill is flawed, and you need to go back and put in all these funds for the things you're shortchanging. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Point of information, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
just
sir.
to clarify in regards to GDOE, who I've been working with very closely since January with their ARP. They have the money to cover the ARP. Even a couple weeks ago, we asked them if they needed more money, and from GDOE and the superintendent and their finance person, they claim they will be okay. And so just to put on the record, you know, they don't, not that they don't need any money, GDOE can use as much as we can give them, but they're good in regards to getting ARP reimbursed. Thank you.
Yes, Senator, and you did a really good job ensuring that they have that reimbursement account, so thank you for that. Senator Law, you're recognized.
First, I want to thank you, Mr. Carlson, for clarifying this morning whether the sunset provision on the BPT had expired. And because I was going to ask you, when you had said it was illegally, that they were being taxed illegally at 5%, I was going to ask you whether BJ Cruz, Tom Atta, James Espadon, Tommy Morrison, Luis Muñoz, Talina Nelson, Joe San Augustine, Mary Torres were going to have to go to jail or something for taxing people at 5%. So I'm just glad that that's clarified. And they did that by a law. It's exactly the same thing, how they reduced it from 6% was done by law, exactly how all these exemptions that in the billions of dollars are being granted to these multi-million-dollar companies. Those are being done pursuant to laws that have been passed. And we found out yesterday that $9 billion in gross income is not being taxed. $3 billion of that is exempt from tax. Only $6 billion are being taxed, actually less, because some, again, are completely exempt. And only $6 billion are being taxed, or supposed to be taxed at 5%. And I wanted to ask Reverend Tax, how does it happen that a company making over $500 million is completely exempt from taxes? BPT.
So since taxpayers report basically under the honor system, voluntary, it would depend on their type of business and or that type of exemption that they claim they are eligible for.
So they're been exempted?
For this one estimate data extraction, it appears so.
All right. And so they're supposed to pay 5% tax on $6 billion instead of $9 billion of income. And that would have given the government of Guam $333 million. In your experience, are we receiving these amounts that you calculate that the government of Guam should be receiving?
Actually, the $333 billion is the total tax at 5% of that taxable income, and then it is further reduced by the LEXB. If you look at a tax return, because it's easier to follow for most, that would be the total of line 14, which says total tax at the 5%. Then 14A provides for a further reduction of that 5% tax for the LEXB. Right now, the LEXB is up to 500,000, greater than 50 to 500,000. The 2% is the reduction. that is also calculated based on the taxable income. The LEXB is based on taxable income and the maximum annual LEXB limitation, which is the $500,000 for one taxpayer. Then after that, you do further calculations to segregate the 2% reduction from the retained 3%, the retained 3% by law, by the LEXB law.
All right, so from these companies making between $200 and $500 million, we're not even going to receive $333 million in taxes after the $3 billion in exemption because they still are going to receive the LEXB reductions.
Right now, they are not part of the LEXB eligibles.
Oh. So are we going, so my question then is, are we receiving the $333 million? Yes, are they
okay,
paying?
so now currently, if it was just one taxpayer, yes, that one taxpayer without LEXB, and then there are other administrative adjustments, overpayments, offsets, or just administrative math errors. So that may be reduced by those lines on a GRT form. It's down at the bottom on lines 43 to 45, I believe. So those are other reductions, but if not, yes, that company will pay the 333.
Yeah, and are you having collection problems? Receiving money that they say on their GRTs are supposed to be paying?
There is
accounts receivable.
Based on the request for information for an updated AR balance, there are companies with AR balance for BPT types, yes.
Do you have a total, for example, for FY23? Or, calendar year 23? And I'll come back for that information and the withholding as well, just curious. And
that is roughly and super estimated at $139 million.
139 millions that you...
For BPT AR?
That they have not paid.
Yes, ma'am.
Due to the government of Guam.
I believe so.
All right. Thank you. I'm concerned about, some of the things as we go forward with the budget and try to clarify this information between the administration, OFB, the different numbers, and of course, many things have changed since the governor submitted her budget, particularly the Congress's actions. But also just, what we've heard from the agencies, from the mayors and different people. So my concern so far, I'm trying to keep a list, is that GDOE seems to be receiving less than in FY25. The Guam Cancer Trust Fund is receiving $500,000 less than FY25 and less than the statutory mandate of 15% of the Healthy Futures Fund. GMH seems to have the greatest cut among all these agencies from FY25 of $15.7 million less. And even with the $5.2 million from FY23 excess in this bill, they still receive $10 million less than FY25. And even without counting the supplemental, which I count, because some people think that's a fluke for GMH, I don't agree. GMH is in so much trouble right now. That's not a fluke. They need the money or we don't get supplies, and our patients are going to suffer. And I don't see why they have to do that. So even without counting the supplemental and adding the 5.2 from the FY23 excess, the committee gives GMH $6.7 million less than the governor's request. GMH is receiving $41.9 million, while the UOG is receiving $44.7 million. The budget cuts our ability to match and receive $14.7 million in Medicaid, in federal dollars. We are cutting our own ability to receive $14.7 million in Medicaid, which is how patients pay GMH, hopefully, which is how they get their own services from doctors. It's critical. The BPT reduction might affect, according to GIDA, a pending BPT bond refinancing that they've already acted on, and the savings to Guam of $11 million. The bill, according to Ms. Flores, does not fund the cuts that have been made to EPA, the entire EPA, the entire Historic Preservation Office, the entire Coastal Management Office. All of these agencies are charged with protecting our environment and our historic resources, which are the essence of the uniqueness, the livability, and our economy on Guam as a Pacific island. The mayors begged us for an increase of $10 million, and they knew the financial situation we're in, but they begged for $10 million more from FY25 to better serve our village residents, and I thought they gave a very excellent example or argument of why they needed that and what good it was going to do. But their budget right now is status quo. It seems that we are short on setting aside cash for tax refunds, which will limit the promptness of paying these refunds. Yes, they might get paid within the court-mandated 6 months, but that hasn't been our standard. That's not the standard we want. We wanted the standard of definitely within 30 days, and I think people are very happy that we can pay them within a couple weeks. And I don't want to go backwards in that standard. I want enough money set aside for tax refunds so that you don't have to short an agency in order to keep the tax refunds paid. All of these should be covered. So it sounds like we need to restore the $20 million that was cut in tax refunds provision, that we need to restore at least $18 million of that. And that's from their initial assessment of the Congress's actions. There might be more later, but a very minimum of $18 million. According to Mr. Byrne, there's also a computation error that we must add $12 million more to the provision of refunds, or the overall refunds, and that we should make a $7 million change to withholding. That's very concerning. And, of course, if we try to make any of these changes, they'll ask us where are we going to get this money. There's nowhere else to get money except from taxes. That's where the money comes from. To pay refunds, we need to allot for that. To pay agencies, to give agencies the money, to give GMH the money, we have to allot for that. I just want to go over a little bit about this. What is an earmark, Mr. Byrne? There's a lot of talk about Simon Sanchez is being earmarked. What is an earmark?
Actually,
in a budget?
I'm not really sure.
Mr. Guerrero?
Senator, my understanding of your terminology of earmark is something that we set aside.
All right, so we're setting aside money for Simon Sanchez in this bill?
I'm not using the word earmark.
All right, well, someone said we are earmarking Simon Sanchez. They also said we're going to make an appropriation for Simon Sanchez in the future, and they asked you, are we going to be able to do that? And you said that's up to us. And I'm very curious to find out. We are in a budget session right here. This is where we make appropriations for things that we need during the fiscal year so that we can plan, so that everybody knows what they're going to get.
I can correct that, Senator, and that is what is in
Are you going to
excess. What is in the chapter is recognizing the $16.3 million and the funding sources transfer authority. But the administration continues to say they cannot use transfer authority for that because they don't either want to or can. So I made the statement on the record when I was on the floor that we will now, even having recognized it with transfer authority, find an appropriation.
All right, so my question is, where is that appropriation going to be found? If we are already short for all of these other agencies, tax refunds, Medicaid, where are we going to find that appropriation? And where are we going to find that appropriation? And when if not now?
So
during the budget.
So what was said on the floor? What was said on the floor is, unfortunately, We have no audited revenue for 2024, but we have revenue in 2023 that we're even appropriating in this budget. So, Senator, I can tell you right now what we're tracking, even in 2025 excess revenues, that could be a funding source. There are several funding sources. And if it's the priority of this legislature and the governor, we'll cut somewhere else.
Point of
If you wanna
information,
build-
Mr. Chair, if I
Yes.
may, point of information.
Yes.
In FY23, excess revenue was negative $308,000.
Yeah.
There was no excess revenue in FY23.
You can ask that during your time, Senator, because they were
It
the
was a
ones.
point of
They were the
information,
ones
yeah.
who gave that, but they were the ones who gave us the number in a counter to your point of information.
All right, so
But it has to be in FY24 to determine how much money really is in excess on 23.
We'll say if they agree with you on that.
So we have no concrete funding for not just assignment Sanchez, but also the 15.2 million that was coming from FY23 excess revenues in this bill, which is a sum of 10 million for GVB and 5.2 to be shared by GMH, for GMH. Is that correct, Mr. Byrne? Excess revenues in the bill are not accurate. It says there's 15.2, and from that, FY23 excess revenues that there are 15.2 million, first of all, and that 10 would go to GVB, 5.2 would go to the hospital, and that there's going to be some money left over here to go to Simon Sanchez. Is that 15.2 million exist?
Well, I would disagree that it's excess revenues. There's a fund balance at the end of fiscal 23 from which I believe it's proposed that some payments be made.
Correct, 15.2.
Yes.
And there is enough for that and Simon Sanchez?
There's a fund balance of 29 million.
So should this number be changed to 29?
Well, you could, but then you're paying out everything that you've just earned.
Right, but we need apparently, that's the only funding source for Simon Sanchez.
Well, it's preferable to pay any expenditures, any current expenditures out of current revenues.
Your time
Well,
is
they're
up, Senator.
reducing
Thank you.
current revenues, so we're apparently, this bill makes it unable to do that.
Senator, thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you very much.
Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to the panel. So what it seems to me is that this budget is taking a gamble in shorting many of the agencies that the retiring speaker said. Perhaps because there is a thought that there's money which has yet to be confirmed by any audit. And so I guess the question I ask of the panel is, are we willing to take that gamble of shorting these agencies and shorting the hospital, shorting Simon Sanchez? Is there, I mean, that's what it seems, it's a gamble. I don't know, in my experience, we've been very conservative when we come to budget sessions to make sure that we don't have to come back and make another budget to cut. This is the first time in my experience that we're doing this, that we're leaving it open, especially now we don't know the full impact of the congressional budget cuts. We're hearing there's even more coming down the pipes from what was said in these past couple days. You know, we hear about the decrease in corporate revenue withholding, decrease in income tax, defunding of agencies in whole or in part. This budget bill does not address that. And this budget bill is seeking to not only cut this fiscal year, but in perpetuity, with the hopes that we are going to collect enough or get enough grants to cover that gap. There are unpaid taxes. to the tune of over $100 million in BPT alone. So what we project in revenues is not what we're going to collect. And even more so with the other categories with the congressional budget bill. We've heard the dismantling of DOE, FEMA, which the local governments are going to have to bear the brunt of, which this budget bill does not address. So that is a big gamble that we are taking with the removal of any additional funding of the rainy day fund, which to me is insufficient if we're thinking about, I know we were talking about, debating about the cap, but even at that, with all these changes happening nationally, I don't see this rainy day fund being able to step in and save the day. And now we talk about economic development. So by not funding the rainy day fund, it's going to affect our bond rating, which has cascading effects economically. On a gamble. This budget bill is a gamble, which I'm not satisfied without any further amendments on this budget bill. We know that the buildup has an endpoint. And yet this budget bill is asking us to gamble in perpetuity to decrease, or to increase, to decrease or fund this rollback. What was said at the SES meeting was that we need to take advantage of what we are gathering as far as collections to create an economy that is sustainable and not so dependent on one industry. And yet we are still trying to recover from our tourism industry. You know, I've went through the conference. What was said at that conference is that the $10 million is just part of the tourism recovery. They need a $60 million more for tourism recovery. So again, this bill is not projecting to me a solid way forward amidst many cuts in the national scene as well as the local. I mean, why do we have to follow that pattern of cutting ourselves? And yes, we need to have more capital improvement projects. That is definitely clear to me. We cannot turn a blind eye from Simon Sanchez. We cannot turn a blind eye from Department of Corrections. That is so needed. We cannot turn a blind eye from our hospital, our access to medical care through Medicaid, which many of our community relies upon. $3.3 million is what's needed to get $14 million in federal funding. That's a no-brainer. And now we, you know, especially with the capital improvement projects, we are seeing higher interest rates in funding these capital improvement projects, which are badly needed. So I think we need to work smarter, not have to take this big gamble, because I think we can work smarter than gambling. We need to be able to fund these services, continue to fund these services without having to gamble loss of revenue, which we expect to happen. So I do have a question for anybody in the panel. So in regards to the bonds, how stable are we in regards to ensuring that we are able to pay the bonds amidst all these considerations before us in this budget bill?
Senator Perez, the construct of the budget is pretty clear. The provision for tax refunds is the first obligation that is paid, then debt service on the bonds, and only after the debt service is paid do we have funds available for appropriation. So it's a first dollar pledge to the bonds, but as it cascades down, as you mentioned, therein lies the potential for less money to be provided, as both you and Senator Talahi have stated.
Is there any issue with the rollback and Lexby? Would it affect bond ratings or bond covenants?
The BPT bonds are pledged. We pledged 3 of the existing 5%. If it rolls back to 4.5%, it doesn't affect the pledge. However, there will probably be a concern if the other elements that support our bond rating, such as continually putting money into the rainy day fund, are derailed, and that's not accomplished. So it's not just the ability to pay the debt service. It's the ability to have reserves to be able to withstand any economic adversities that come about, any reactions to natural disasters. So it's more than just, do you have enough bandwidth to pay your debt service? And the bond rating back to investment grade was predicated primarily on how we've been doing the last 4 or 5 years with adequate budgeting, very good expense control. As a matter of fact, the return of tourism by Moody's, it's almost like you're doing so well, back to Senator Gumatau's question, the Moody's actually realized that we're doing pretty darn good without a meaningful return to tourism, and that would just be like the cherry on top of the sundae. So rating agencies used to have concerns about all cylinders in the engine firing, but Moody's has taken the view that you're doing very well, and they expect the return to tourism, and they also understand it's going to take a little while. But everything needs to be put in perspective when you take a look at the bond rating. You just can't look at things, on a one-off basis. You really do have to take a look at a holistic economic picture and policies that are in place, and whether or not they're continually adhered to. Or look, with respect to the rainy day fund, if we had hit the statutory cap, we wouldn't be having this discussion. If we had the ability to put more money into the rainy day fund despite the statutory cap, that's even a bigger plus. And it takes some of the, to use your word, gamble out of what it is that would have otherwise have been done, because you're checking off all the boxes before you start looking at other reductions in revenue. But we have not met the statutory cap yet for the rainy day fund. So to entertain a suspension right now is not in our best interest.
Yeah, I guess maybe the question wasn't fully answered. My concern is that with Lexby and the rollback, is there any risk of bond covenant, violating the bond covenants. And perhaps this is a question for the bond counsel. I would actually like to seek a response from Gita if they can look into this. My also concern too, especially, is the income tax refunds. And I feel that it is underfunded, and to have, again, this is another gamble we're taking, especially in light of more deductions, increased deductions, income tax deductions. My concern is that we will go back to those days where there's delayed payments, which actually increases the cost to the refunds because there's an interest rate that goes with that. And to me, to be fiscally responsible is to ensure that there's enough provisions there and not have to gamble that, you know, there's not enough. I think it's better to work conservatively in that regard. And so I do echo the sentiments of my colleagues in that we have to make sure there is enough in tax refunds available. So I think my amendments will reflect some of these comments, and I believe I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Senator, I will remind the body just moments ago in my discussion with the BBMR director, with the exception of the BPT rollback, this budget is only $5.7 million different. Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hafa to my people of Guam. Welcome to everyone. Before I start with some of my questions, I just want to highlight for the people of Guam how truly absurd this conversation is. The discussion we're having right now is about the top 10% of taxpayers and the BPT. And we had some interesting numbers come up in these discussions, and they kind of blew my mind. So just to give people a scale of what we're talking about, we are talking about $333 million in taxes, provided by 680 businesses. But if you look under the hood of that number, if you break it down and you just look at the suffering multimillionaires, the ones making from $2 to $20 million, they account for $3.392 billion of gross receipts. Crazy big number, huh? It's bigger than I thought it ever would be. And I said from the beginning that my big criticism with this is that we were painting with too broad a brush, giving the same tax benefits to companies, corporations that are making hand over fist with money falling from the sky like manna. You know what the top 1% of businesses here on Guam are generating in revenue? Just the top 1%. Of the 20,000 businesses, less than 100 account for $6.369 billion. Of the $9.7 billion we're bringing in, the top 1% is bringing in $6.3 billion. And we want to give them the same tax cuts as mom and pop shops. That is the absurdity of our conversation today in this body, and why I am so vehemently against it. This body has shown that we have a willingness to give funds and assistance to businesses that need it. We've given multiple rounds of LEAP that add up to more than a 0.5% cut. We've used this to pay for power credits, to entertain the ideas of other subsidies, cuts in the fuel surcharge that aren't included in the budget. They want to raise your gas prices to pay for tax cuts for the rich. It's absurd. So, let's go back in time a little bit to understand why the BPT got to 5% in the first place. During the first Trump administration, it was raised to 5% in a bipartisan effort by then Governor Eddie Calvo and Speaker B.J. Cruz as a direct result of those cuts. The idea was that this BPT raise would be temporary so long as these Trump tax cuts were temporary. But now these Trump tax cuts have just been made permanent, meaning we are now having a permanent gaping hole in our budget to pay for tax cuts for the rich. And they want to roll back our services, our revenues for our community to give 100 multimillionaires even more of a tax cut. There are $3.09 billion worth of exemptions in our charts here. Do you know who gets the vast majority of these exemptions? The top 1%, the top 100 companies. Of the $3.1 billion in exemptions, they account for $2.1 billion. Why is the people making billions of dollars, making 2/3 more than the other 500 or 600 multimillionaires? Why are we giving them a bigger tax exemption, a bigger tax cut than everybody else? The people that need it least. This goes to highlight what have I been saying from the beginning, that this is a tax cut from the rich, for the rich, by the rich. None of these benefits will hit the working people of Guam. None of these benefits will help the middle class of Guam. Your prices will not go down. They will pocket all of these profits and pad their bottom line. They have said so much in their testimony publicly. And then there's the rainy day fund. Director Byrne has confirmed that, for the record, as of today, the rainy day fund contains only about $55 million. Sounds like a lot. But do you remember what it was like when Mawar struck? I know a lot of people in Guam feels like they did not get enough support. And you know what not enough support felt like? That felt like $338 million in FEMA assistance. 55 million is not 338 million. And our President Trump wants to cut FEMA, wants to make the states and territories pay a majority of their own recovery costs. And now is the time we want to shortchange that? To give billionaires and multimillionaires more? It is a privilege to work here on Guam. This place is beautiful. And these numbers have shown me that this can be a place of prosperity. And I'm sorry the tourist numbers have not come back. But the truth of it is, they probably aren't going to be coming back for a very long time. And nothing to do with Guam. In the mainland, these jackbooted stormtroopers are arresting people at the airport for making funny memes about the vice president. Look him up, Matt Mickelson. He got arrested. He had a picture of J.D. Vance bald on his phone, and he was arrested. It was a big international incident. Tourism is down across the entire United States. We are part of that United States. And not only are we part of that United States, we are in the middle of extremely high historic tensions with China, potentially on the verge of World War III. The thing holding our local economy together is the defense spending of the military. The military-industrial complex, I am not a fan of them, but that is where our revenue is coming from. We're doing pretty well, as we heard, despite our lack of return to tourism because of this military spending. So if we want to give breaks and leaps and power credits and water credits to help people that need it, by God, let's do it. I'm guilty as charged. I hear a lot of talk about, oh, we could have built Sanchez, but we gave power credits. Yeah, I was the main sponsor for most of it, and I'm proud of it. I'd give more power credits if I can. The only reason we're not is because this new majority is stopping us and shortchanging the people of Guam to pad the bottom lines of the mega donors that they need to run for governor. I don't mind giving more to these struggling businesses, but not at the cost of cutting off our own head and running around like a bunch of chickens when things start to fall apart. I watched 16 years of financial irresponsibility. And to the credit of the current administration, they fixed it. They got the financial ship righted. And in one term, we've forgotten for so long, we want to give the power back. And we instantly want to go back to the practices of the Dark Ages, back to deficit spending. You know what it means when we give authorization, but without any, what's the word, appropriations? To the people of Guam, this body is trying to give the governor a checkbook with no funds in the bank account and telling her to go figure it out. We are abdicating our responsibility. We are debasing ourselves as a body to fund our corporate masters. So to my people of Guam, pay attention to what's happening, because we are going to have to come back and fix this. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but the chickens will come home to roost. And all because we want to give our rich buddies more money.
Thank you, Senator. Lines drawn. Pick up a packet. Senator Montanani, you're recognized.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we want the business community, the private sector, to continue to bail out the government of Guam. But what has been the return on the investment? Do people feel safe? Are schools still falling apart? The Guam Memorial Hospital, is it falling apart? Education, do we have a meth problem? Some of my colleagues are painting this as doom and gloom instead of seeing this as an opportunity to start right-sizing the government. How many times do we have to hear in our community that the government is bloated, there's political hires, et cetera, ad nauseum? And yet one of my colleagues making it clear, or made it a career, to criticize this administration and the government in general, but now all of a sudden seems to be towing the line for the administration. Even claiming colleagues in here don't have concerns for their oversight, specifically healthcare and education. So interesting, considering these same agencies that I've spoken to, that my other colleague has spoken to, have said that the previous chairs weren't helping when they were in charge. They weren't listening to them, hence the problems that persist today. So I really just look forward to a debate in the coming days regarding this budget. And my questions were for the Guam Economic Development Authority, but as was said earlier, Tina is sick. So Tina, I hope you get better. Thank you.
Excuse my seat, Senator Montanani. Senator Guåhan, you recognize?
Aye, day. Just wanted to say that because, you know, I don't really have any questions, but, you know, new guys sitting here, round two questions, and, you know, I always like write down all the things that I want to ask as the information is provided. And then because we're stuck in the middle, right, the questions are asked. And then I get confused because the questions asked are obviously to support whatever agenda or proposals that are coming down the line, which I get. But then like the numbers start to get distorted. The understanding starts to become distorted. I'm confused, which then I start to wonder if the community is confused. And then I realize, like, okay, now we're not asking questions, we're just giving speeches. And so, you know, what I'm trying to say, or why I'm saying this is because when we look at, the narrative and just the messaging that is going out in regards to this bill that's put before us. I mean, at least for me, I'm going to speak for myself because, when I ran for office, and my one of the things we talked about in regards to the size of the government, like the previous senator shared, is that it's bloated. And so, my support for this measure was not because I want to give the rich a break and steal from the poor. And I'd like to at least caution and ask my colleagues, maybe we're used to this because some of us have been in office for a while, and when we speak, we're getting the attention of the people that we're used to getting attention, and we feed whatever it is that drives us to speak like that. But the average person, like my auntie, the average person, like my friend who has really gotten into politics only because of me, like me running, and they get confused. So we're not necessarily, even with the whole Simon Sanchez thing, even GDOE, speaking to them a week or two ago, we knew what the budget was going to look like. We knew what we were going to do. But then, of course, everybody and their moms and dads in this legislature and in the administration is saying that we're not going to, Simon Sanchez is going to be stalled. And that's far from the truth, right? Is it in the budget like they would like it to? No. But did we discuss a plan, just so the public knows and on the record, like this legislature to include I'm going to speak for my colleagues that we've at least talked about who, in the Republican majority, we plan to support Simon Sanchez. It's like all the other things. And when you look at some of the claims about the state and we're not prioritizing education, healthcare, bro, we've only been here 7 months. We've inherited a mess. And it's for me, new guy again, I think it's pretty, I don't know, I walk out because I think it's pretty disgusting to sit here and hear others who have been in this hall for years and say that we, the new 38 legislature, is not doing anything about all these things that have existed for a very long time. So I'm very confused, and I'm not speaking as a politician because I'm new to this. I'm trying to understand, what are we doing wrong? Because even the ones who oppose this budget have opposed every single budget that has come through this legislature. So I'm confused. I don't know, and for me, I'm usually individual. I'm an individual thinker, but I'm trying to listen to them and try to understand their side. And then, of course, my colleagues that I work with, I'm trying to understand their side. And then I really go back and look at the previous legislatures because I kind of followed along, and I'm like, they don't like that one. They were in charge. They don't like what we're proposing, and we're a different body. So I don't know where, I'm asking outside people, I don't know where to, so again, and you guys from the administration, despite some of our views on how we think we should move, thank you for coming and for dealing with us, because even for me as a new senator, I'm like, I don't know how you guys do this. I mean, honestly, I don't know how you do this, because for me, and I've always said this to every person that I've worked with in my 7 months as a senator, I'm just here to help. That is it. I don't necessarily ask questions because I'm trying to confuse people to believe what I'm trying to say. I ask questions when I'm unsure, and I don't, for me, I don't need to wait till it's my turn on the microphone. If I really had a question, I would call you even before. But I just want to say this because, man, I don't know how many more days, Mr. Chair, do we have of this? Because I think we can do a lot more with really just, at the end of the day, nobody's reached out to us. They're claiming that we're doing all these things. Nobody's reached out to us to ask. And so I think I'm just venting now at this point, but thank you. Thank you for being here. And, to the panel, really, thank you for going through this. I think some of you, this is your 4th or 5th or maybe even 15th time. And man, I don't know how you guys do this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sidus Masi, Senator, your time is your time. If you use it to vent, vent away. And you've made some very salient, solid points in that vent. Senator, Ranking Member Tina Muñoz-Barnes, you're recognized.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair, and Mananas Sidus to you and the panel, my colleagues, and of course the listening audience. And I truly appreciate the comments of my partner on the other side, freshman Senator Borja, for sharing his perspective. And yeah, it really should be about coming together and not just rhetoric, but As I noted, Mr. Chair, on the previous round, on the first round, that I did have some concerns, but I'm really trying to work a balance here and seeing what we can do. And some things are fundamentally important that there must be Constitution protections in place to help our residents who literally cannot afford legal representation. So, like I said last round, Mr. Chair, I'm also concerned with the underfunding of an important component in our justice system. I talked about it yesterday, and that is the private attorney panel. We will be appropriating for the first time to the Public Defender Service Corporation. Specifically, Mr. Chair, the substitute budget bill appropriates for the PAP, the private attorney panel, $164,486. And again, this is to the PAP. Colleagues, today I received a letter, and it's real, got the facts, from Attorney Stephen Hattori, who's the Director of Public Defender Service Corporation, and I would like to read in part of it into the record, and it specifically states this. And if, Mr. Chair, if our colleagues want a copy of it, I can ask the Sergeant of Arms to take it from me and get it copied to share. The Sixth Amendment Center's independent evaluation made clear that the PAP could not remain under the judiciary without risking the independence of defense services. The legislature's decision to create an independent indigent defense system aligned Guam's with the national standards and reaffirmed the principle that every person, regardless of income, deserves a fair trial with qualified legal representation. Mr. Chair, now the responsibility and the cost rest with the Public Defender Service Corporation. Unfortunately, the cost was not factored into the substituted version of the fiscal year 2026 budget. Instead, the PAP was appropriated the $167,000, which is 10% of the actual projected cost of $1,637,390. So I want to share that in fiscal year 2024, the private attorney panel costs about $1,573,437. And based on the recent case volume and historical expenditures, the estimated annual private attorney panel budget for 2026 is legal fees at the $1,539,900, averages of 10,266 hours at $150 an hour. The investigator cost is at $18,935. Other attorney claims were at $11,142, and the total estimate cost is at $1,569,977. And as the good speaker from Magaʹhågan, Speaker Bloss stated during the closing remarks of his bill 97-38, justice isn't free. The right to counsel is not a luxury. It is a constitutional guarantee. Fully funding the private attorney panel of the Public Defender Service Corporation is essential to meeting that guarantee for the people of Guam, and that we respectfully urge your support and that of the body for the $1.5 million needed to honor this responsibility without compromising individual constitutional rights and our court system. So my inquiry or my question to BBMR, Ms. Director Steve Guerrero, how did OFB determine the current appropriation level of about $160,000 was sufficient to fund the PAP?
First of all, Senator, thank you for the promotion in my position. But I think you were referring to BBMR Director, but she said BBMR Director Steve Guerrero. I'm not too sure. Was it me, or was the question to him or to me?
You know what, to Steve Guerrero or BBMR, anybody up there who can really answer this, because this is really grave and needed for further protections for those in the indigent community that may need that legal representation. Thank you.
Point of information, Mr. Chair. As the Oversight Chair, point of information, just real quick.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the Oversight Chair of Public Defender's Office, I understand what the good speaker is talking about and the concern she has, because myself, as well as the author of Bill 97, had that same concern regarding the underfunding of the Public Defender's Office. So we had that same scenario. And we created, there was an amendment that we placed in the budget bill to bring back the funding to the PPA, because in the budget bill, it strikes out the funding for the PPA that has been funded for years out of the Client Service Fund out of the Judiciary, which is in the Guam Code annotated requirement. So what our amendment will be doing, will be striking that out and incorporating back the funding source, which is about $1.5 million. That $168,000 is, to me, thank you very much, for this, but putting an additional 169. It can cover the shortfall of the PAP. So that's good, but again, the author of this, the senator talking about this, we are going to reinstate by an amendment to bring that funding source back, if that could answer your question.
Mr. Chair, I do have the floor.
Thank you for your, I understand.
Duly
It was a
noted,
point.
that I can
Duly
ask,
noted, and Senator, you may proceed, Senator Barnes.
So if
Ranking member.
I know a lot of my time has been taken up already, but if BBMR or anybody up there in the panel can answer that question.
Senator, let me see if I can address that.
Or BBMR, is BBMR here?
Senator, if I may just answer your question. In the executive EBR, there was a request for a private attorney for $168,000. In the bill, we appropriate $168,000 for the private attorney under Public Defender Service Corporation.
Okay.
I mean, just clarification, it's not under BBMR, but it's under their budget requests.
Okay.
And we did fund it in the bill.
Okay, so while this has been discussed previously, I want to clarify specifically that public defender, if the governor has the statutory ability to use her transfer authority to supplement the public defender's budget, does the governor have that authority?
Senator, the Public Defender Corporation is not under the executive branch. It's actually under the reserve category in the bill. So it's not part of the actually executive branch appropriation.
So she cannot. The answer is she cannot.
No.
Okay. So thank you for that. But thank you, Mr. Chair. And in the spirit of transparency, I have submitted an amendment to fully fund the PAP. And hope that we adopt one of the amendments to increase the revenue so that we can direct some of those funds for this worthy cause. And like I said, right, we work with the numbers, we work as what has been submitted. We take the facts that has already happened and where it has been before and where it's come to based on actual presentations that have come before this body, and this is where I'm at. So that amendment has been submitted, and I'm hoping that my colleagues will consider where we're at and support this effort as Public Defender Service Corporation and of course the court-appointed attorneys when representation can't be done by the Public Defender's Office or Guam Legal Service or any other legal entity out there that can provide for the indigent community. So I ask my colleagues to please consider this effort and know that the amendment will be there for round 3. Sana Masi.
Sidus Masi, Ranking Member, Senator Tina Munoz Barnes. Yeah, so you know the attorney's already been set. So we'll debate that when we get to that provision, but thank you for your comments and questions. Senator Joe Shimazu San Agustin, you're the one, and then lunch, so Ketunaza, no. Sige muna.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, let me start out with number one. Everybody keeps talking about EBR, OB. Now, no. We're here to discuss the budget. You can point fingers anywhere you want. At the end of the day, it's our budget. The Guam Legislature will have to pass the budget in some form or fashion and move on. Who cares where it originated from? It's here. Okay, I just wanted to say that. Now back to Steph. You mentioned a bunch of agencies that are going to be trimmed down. Can you repeat that list and the amount? You mentioned EPA and all of them, just so we know what the dollar total is.
Yes, sir, I will do that, but I also committed to providing that in writing. So as soon as we break for lunch, I can put that in writing and have that sent down to the committee.
The only reason why I'm asking that it be repeated is so that my colleagues will be reminded that we need to find a source of funding.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
I can do that.
That's all. So I guess we'll wait until that comes out then.
No, I can do that now if you
Okay,
like.
I just want to, it's kind of like, if you repeat it often enough, no, it'll probably stick on the head that, hey, we need to do something. We just can't ignore it. That's my concern.
Yes, sir. We're going back and we're verifying numbers again, like I said, but we do know for PBS Guam, it is $978,271 that was cut from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting that they were expecting. That represents 65% of their budget. That will cover staffing and programming for the fiscal year.
Okay.
And then also we have $3,547,816 for Guam Environmental Protection Agency. For Bureau of Statistics and Plans, it's $828,220, and that's for Coastal Zone Management, that program. So that's where we are for those that I have definite numbers on right now.
All right. Okay. Reminder to my colleagues, okay? So far, everything they've said is talking about PBS, EPA. That's the biggest thing for me. We got to keep them open. Want to talk about cleaning up Guam? Take a look at yourself when you don't support and find ways to fund EPA. BBMR, Mr. Lester. Primo, you keep mentioning the 16.3. Please confirm the need for the 16.3 was or was not required prior to this year. Because I remember when that bill was introduced to fund Simon Sanchez, for some of my colleagues that were members then, because I was here, we first had to deal with a bill that directed DOE to take care of Simon Sanchez. They failed. Then Senator Roy Cananta came on board and said, let's figure out a way. We sat with DOE. We found another bill. That's how this bill was created, 37, Public Law 37-22. I may be wrong, but I doubt it. Now, can you tell us, because I heard it this morning, but sometimes we have to remind ourselves, back then, when the bill was passed, did we need the 16.3 then? And if we did, why wasn't any colleague that was a member then said something so that the chairman of the education doesn't have to say, Afasti? Because today, we need to address it. I'm from Jigo. I'm concerned about the sharks. I don't know who else is from Jigo here, and it really doesn't matter to me. I just want to take care of the Jigo folks. Mr. Carlson.
Thank you, Senator. As I mentioned earlier, the RFP went out March or April. We got responses. We're currently in negotiations with the highest ranked offerer. It would not have been prudent prior to that to have asked for the money because it's for pre-construction and activities associated with activities after I would, submit, you have selected somebody. So you're working with somebody, and their pre-construction activities as a result of an RFP having been issued and an award. Well, we weren't there yet. So we didn't need the 16 million until recently, and we do need the 16 million. I'll state that again, and we've got a commitment to provide the 16 million. So I think we're all on the relatively the same page now, and I agree with what it was that you said when you started. It's not our bill, your bill. It's the budget bill that is being discussed, and we need to collaboratively put input to the bill to try to enhance it while we have the chance. And yes, we do need the money, and we did not need it previously.
All right. And the reason why I'm asking that is because I'm the former chair of appropriations. And if you really take a look at the record, folks, for the freshman senators, just look at the records, see who voted on the budget, who participated in the budget acts, and just go to that script and just feel free. But moving along, we're okay, Mr. Chairman. Moving along, I'd like to ask either one, maybe BBMR or OFB, if we must, what or where would you recommend we adjust to restore the rainy day fund and increase the tax refund? If we must, where and where? What and or where would you recommend?
Okay, I'll go first.
Go for it.
Don't roll back the BPT, and we'll have all the money we need.
Okay. Steve?
Right now, we're going to have, if we don't do either one, we're going to have to find an additional $41 million. Okay? So all I'm saying now, Senator, is what we proposed in the bill was exactly what we did. We rolled it back. It freed up $20 million, $40 million. We used that money to allocate to cover the needs of the departments and agencies for the fiscal year. If you're asking me where else can we make up the difference, right now I would have to go back and piecemeal, go back to every department and see what we can do to make that adjustment. I can't tell you exactly where, but if that has to happen, then it will happen. So, but I would have to have the time to do that.
So, Steve, you're not echoing what Lester stated. Stop the BBT rollback, and then you can adjust it. You're saying you're willing to go back and look at everybody's budget and make the adjustment. Is that what you're stating?
If we are not going to roll back the BBT, sir, yes.
All right. Okay. I'm just trying to understand how, it was mentioned by Tina yesterday, and either one can comment it, maybe the EBR folks or the OFB, it doesn't matter, but somebody needs to comment. What allowed Guam to increase or maintain the credit rating we have today? What was one of the components? Because I need to remind all my colleagues here, whenever you go to the bank and you want to borrow, you got to show the ability, sustainability of your ability to fund something and your ability to maintain it and then move forward. That's how, last time I checked, that's how they check my record when I'm going to borrow. And if some of you have borrowed before, and if you haven't, try, then you'll know. Lester, maybe you can throw that out, the answer, because you've been to the market.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Again, the continued demonstration of fiscal responsibility, the elimination of the deficit that occurred early on in the administration, and while we're the stewards of the budget that the body passes, the body passed the budget, right? So it was a collaborative effort that resulted in the deficit being eliminated, budget surpluses, a return to establishing the rainy day fund, and continued fiscal discipline. That's what got us back into the investment grade rating. So we would really like to see a continuance of this financial stewardship that has been demonstrated. And one of the things that we would like to be able to see is continued resources being available, especially in light of, as things that were discussed earlier, the hit that we're going to be taking with the taxation that we're going to have to pay next calendar year on earnings that are derived in this calendar year. If we don't have the wherewithal come next year, the first quarter, when people start filing income tax refunds with the heightened deductions, we might get caught short. We don't want to do that. We also want to make sure that we continue to put money into the rainy day fund. That really is important. So we spoke about two things that you hit on, was adjusting the provision for income tax refunds, and I think we're getting consensus that we probably need to do that. And that's nice. And then the rainy day fund, again, I hope there's consensus that it's not a prudent move not to put money in there, and that the suspension is not advised at this time.
All right, thank you. I got a question. Steph, you never mentioned FEMA. Is the federal government shutting down FEMA?
FEMA is in a state of realignment. I think is the best way to describe my recent
yeah, well, it appears that
encounters.
only when a red state is in a disaster when it can't close FEMA. It's what it appears, because
Actually, sir, even red states are facing issues. I believe that it was Arkansas that had a problem with disasters, and they did not get their disaster declaration approved. They had a series of Category 3 and 4 tornadoes that ripped through the state, and the president did not approve it for them. So, that's not a problem isolated to Guam. It is a problem that is being reviewed. We do know that one of the issues that we faced with FEMA recently was the cessation of the BRIC grants, the Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities. Those applications were put on pause. That was very recently that happened. And there is no indication that that is going to be resumed. And that's where we get a lot of money to do things like flood mitigation and things like that. So, yeah, we just don't know really right now what's happening with FEMA. That's way above where we're at and not within our control.
okay. Now, maybe Lester or Steve can answer this, or either one of you can compete with each other, but what is the true definition, the use of rainy day fund? Use. Let's not compete too much, okay? Because the use of rainy day fund. Because if FEMA's not around, we're in trouble. If we stop contributing to the rainy day fund, we're in trouble. Because you can't backpedal that far. Okay? So if you can please define the use of rainy day fund. Because if we get a financial disaster, it's raining. Lester, give it a shot, or Steve. Either one of you.
First of all, Senator, yes. By the definition of the law, it says the rainy day fund shall be used for, one, the elimination or reducing the general fund deficit existing at the end of the fiscal year, or two, to use for the expense caused by a Guam emergency. No monies can be transferred from the rainy day fund to the governor pursuant to her transfer authority. Those are the only two ways you can utilize the rainy day fund pursuant to the law that created the rainy day fund.
Thank you, Steve. Lester, you have any comment to that so as we can clear the air?
Yeah, the most powerful word in this body here is notwithstanding. So if the body understood that there was a legitimate reason outside of what Mr. Guerrero just read to pull money from the rainy day fund, and there was consensus amongst the people here and if there was a concurrence necessary by the governor, and she concurred, and I think we would be best served, because I think level-headed leadership would have been demonstrated, that it's an issue outside. One of the things that transpired with Mawar was there was an authorization to be able to pull money from the rainy day fund to fund the Mawar recovery fund, but we didn't need to do that. We had other sources of income because we had resources to be able to fund that Mawar account that is being used exclusively for FEMA-approved projects, so that nobody has to worry about how do you fund 100% of what it is that the FEMA-approved project's going to cost. So we front that money, we adhere to the FEMA requirements and scope of work. When we're all done, we get FEMA approval, and then we can apply for a 90% reimbursement that goes back in that fund. When everything's said and done, that fund, which is specific to Mawar, can then be utilized for other reasons within the government of Guam. But until that use and damages and FEMA approvals for costs associated with Mawar are completed, which they're not, that fund still is necessary. But we didn't have to tap the rainy day fund, even though, as Steve mentioned, there was an authorization to assist to fund that Mawar recovery fund. So it's really your guys' call.
All right. Okay, thank you. One simple question now, because many times I've asked questions about FEMA. What's the turnaround when we report that we're requesting for FEMA assistance and then we pay up front and then they reimburse? What's the turnaround for that money? Because I know in the past it's sometimes a year or two or longer. Go for it, Ed.
Once we submit it to FEMA and we get authorization from FEMA, we actually have to complete the project and then claim reimbursement. There's no interim claims. You have to actually
So what's the turnaround? We complete the project, we already spend the money up front. What is the turnaround on getting that money?
It varies,
It varies?
and we haven't had that many yet to have much of a track record. But, I mean, generally, if I could just talk about this, because it is also a concern, we used to get federal reimbursements overnight. There's been a change for most federal reimbursements, two changes. One is that they closed the portal, which forces us to make these claims, and DOA staff have to get up early in the morning to make these claims because the portal closes before we start work. And the second change is some claims were paid automatically. Now we have to justify each claim and wait for the agency to justify it as well. So we are actually seeing delays on our regular federal claims, and what used to take overnight now sometimes takes 7 or 8 days.
So within the month, you get the money, what you say?
Eventually, we get
not eventually, do you get the money?
Do we get
which money? You make the claim, in other words, within 30 days, you said a week, 7 days, or did you say 7 to 8 months?
We can't make a claim that's not authorized. The portal won't allow us to.
I know that, Ed, but when it's already approved, authorized, you spend the money, you send the receipt, what's the turnaround? That's all I'm asking. Is it 7 to 8 days or 7 to 8 months?
It's generally 7 or 8 days, but we really don't have enough of a track record yet on FEMA claims to know.
Okay, the only reason I'm asking this is because this is not your first rodeo. This is not your first administration, neither is it for Lester. So if you look at previous records, what was the turnaround then? Lester can probably answer it. Because you were at GMH at the time. Lester was still there.
Did FEMA reimbursements for like dolphin and other things like that are horrendously slow. So, I mean, there's some blame on the local side for taking their time to get everything squared away. But even when our ducks are in a row, and we submit the project for reimbursement, it takes a while, and it has taken a while. But there are so many of our counterparts in FEMA that took the early out or basically were terminated. So our whole infrastructure and all of our counterparts in Region 9, it's like you call and nobody's there. So it has been, they are a victim of, DOGE. And unfortunately, we're having to kind of figure out what to do next. And as Stephanie had mentioned, a lot of times there's just nobody on the other end of the phone, or you send an email and nobody responds.
All right, thank you.
I think one of the areas where there's a delay and is where an entity, not only the government, but private entities that make FEMA claims are in the middle of a claim and the FEMA team changes and they have to start effectively the process all over again. So now we've been paying out in the last 2 or 3 months private entity FEMA claims that were made, obviously, at the time of the typhoon or very shortly thereafter. So it's like 2 years, right?
Thank you for that final statement, 2 years. Okay, with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Thank you for the panel for being here.
Sidus Masi, Senator and former Chairman, for the body's edification, 2 appropriations were made for important things that go to market that aren't even close. $35 million for GMH, which I voted for, $5 million for DOC, which I voted for, and they have never even touched market. That's the record, sir. And it seems like some of our funding sources that we identified are nice funding sources, just not for the rollback of the BPT. Sidus Masi, we'll come back at 1:30.